All right. Well, good morning, everyone. This is our May PPACG Mobility Coordinating Committee meeting. It is 9:31. I believe we have a quorum, so we can go ahead and do some voting business when that time occurs. So good morning and welcome. I hope everyone had a lovely long weekend. Um, so just to kind of start us off, I'm looking for an approval on the agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it currently sits?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second. Rosa McCormick.
Wonderful. All right. So I have a motion and a second to move and approve the agenda as it currently sits. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Not seeing or hearing any opposition, we will go ahead and approve the agenda as it currently sits. Moving on to the approval of the minutes for February. So it's been a little bit since we've gotten to meet. There have been other competing meetings that have taken up our time, and it's nice for us to be able to get together this morning, but we have some meeting minutes from February to approve. So do I have a motion to approve the February meeting minutes?
Rosa McCormick motions to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Aaron Somero, second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as they currently sit from the February meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Not seeing or hearing any opposition to the approval of the meeting minutes for the February meeting, those meeting minutes will be moved and approved. All right. Any public comments or presentations?
We did not have any public comments come in before or during the meeting. So.
Okay. All right. So we can move on to action items. Any membership appointments?
We did not have any membership appointments for this time.
All right. And I don't believe we have any community guests or provider presentations. So we can move on to agenda item number 8, which is the debrief of the specialized transit plan.
Yeah, that is me. Deanna, one of the things before we get started on number 8, I just wanted to make everybody aware of some things going up. I'm going to move D to A. Some things going on at PPACG. So as of June 17th, we will actually be closing our doors. And will be completely virtual because we are getting a new air handling system in our building. Those of you who have attended meetings over the past several months, y'all have felt the warm nature of our building. Currently, we have no control over our no control over the heat, so it gets really hot in here. So we're going to be closing our physical location for 12 weeks. And we'll keep everybody updated on how that progress is going. So starting today and starting definitely in June, we will be all virtual up through September. So just wanted to keep everybody aware of that. All of us are accessible at PPACG. You can email us, shoot us a phone call. We actually may reach out to some of your organizations if we may need to borrow some space for hosting some of our committee meetings and that kind of thing that do have to be in person. But appreciate y'all's patience through it during this time, and hopefully it will feel a lot better in here in September. So you won't be sweating it out. So appreciate everybody's patience with that. So any questions in regards to that? It's business as usual. It's just a lot like how we had to deal with in the pandemic. anybody calling into the area agency on aging, any senior needing assistance, we have the capability of answering all of our phone calls from home. So we will be managing the front desk phone as well as our individual phones through our web capabilities. And also, if there's an individual that needs a face-to-face, our staff is able to meet with them at kind of any public location to help them out. So trying to accommodate as much as possible during this time. Great. Those of you also who attend board meetings, our board meetings will be hosted in a couple of different places over the next few months. One in particular will be at the
So I can dive in if you want me
go
to.
for it.
So we are planning for the July Board of Directors meeting would take place at El Paso County Centennial Hall. So if you're familiar where the El Paso County Commissioners meet, it's in that same auditorium. We're also looking, and that's for a July meeting. In August, we are looking at the El Paso County Citizen Service Center up in Garden of the Gods. We may or may not need that space, just depending on how quickly construction moves. I made a joke this meeting that if it moves ahead of schedule, and I think that as anyone who's done construction planning with these kind of projects, I don't think we can anticipate it running ahead of schedule, but if it does, we may have the August board meetings back in this room. But that's kind of the backup plan. And in September, they'd be upstairs, and we've already told the contractors we would probably just stop construction on that date so that we don't have banging and clanging going on upstairs for the September board meeting. So that's the update in terms of the board schedules, but all the other committees at PPACG, as well as PPRT, because we also manage them, will be fully virtual.
Thank you, Jared. And please help us out, as I know that you refer seniors to us for some of our programs. Just help us out in communicating to them that we are open. We're just without a physical location. We can show up, but we have to wear a hard hat and PPE, which none of us want to do. So yeah, it's just a unique situation, and hopefully we'll end up better after this. So skipping back to A.
Or can I just interrupt for one brief second? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel I was remiss in my duties. We didn't do introductions, so I apologize for that.
Oh, it's okay.
So can we just briefly do introductions? We'll start with the folks in the room, and then we'll touch on the virtual folks, and then just so that we all know who's here. I apologize.
Aaron Somero, Director of Transportation at Silver Key Senior Services.
And Valerie Anders, CFO at Silver Key.
Laura Cruz, PPACG Mobility Coordinator. And then we have Jared in the back.
Okay. And then Kristen, do you want to start us off in the virtual space? And then I'll let you popcorn it around.
Sure. Kristen Amundsen with Goodwill of Colorado. Not sure who's next. Sorry.
It's okay. Rosa, do you want to go next?
Hello, Rosa McCormick, City of Fountain.
Wonderful. Kathy?
Kathy Lowry, Teller Senior Coalition.
Wonderful. Mark?
Mark Bowers with Fountain Valley Senior Center.
Fantastic. Jacob?
Good morning, everybody. Jacob Matson, Mountain Metro Transit.
Ronnie?
Good morning, Ronnie Gordon, Teller Senior Coalition Transportation.
And Sagan? No? Maybe Sagan stepped away for a minute. Sagan is with Invita. And I am Deanna Rumsey. So, all right. Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Laura. Go ahead.
No, that's great. And I'm glad Jacob's on the call. So Jacob, feel free to stop me if and make a comment. But I just wanted to give everybody a update on the specialized transit plan. As you guys know, that we actually canceled the meetings the past couple of months because we've had several other meetings that have been in particular addressing the specialized transit plan and transit plan. So I appreciate everybody's participation in those meetings over the past few months. So where we are today is we have basically wrapped up the public engagement piece of it. So we did a couple of open houses, one down at the city administration building, one at the Independence Center, and then we also had a virtual open house that we had a few participants attend, as well as ability for folks to go on the project's website, which is accessible through our website as well as MMT's website, to be able to make any comments on the virtual open house presentation. So we're wrapping up that public comment period for us presenting the different projects that the consultant company is is suggesting for our area, based upon engaging with those that utilize transit and those that want to utilize transit and have barriers to accessing transit. And so wanted to dive in just briefly about some of those highlighted projects that the consultants have come up with, and we hire these consultants because they are industry experts, right? They're working across the nation to help municipalities and communities identify opportunities to maximize the current resources that are available, identify resources that need to be available to those to be able to access transportation in a great way. So we contracted out with Nelson Nygaard. A lot of you guys were able to interact with them over the past few months. Nelson Nygaard has worked with a lot of communities from just a specialized transportation as well as transit, traditional transit planning. And so some of the highlights in terms of needs that were identified, and then potential solutions being suggested. One in particular that I think is important to note within this group, and has kind of been a reoccurring theme over the past two plans, is just an easier way for people to access the opportunities and the resources that are available to them for the individual rides that they need. So what I mean by that is, we know as folks that work in transit day to day, that ultimately each agency has parameters on who they can serve, where they can serve, and what their capabilities are to serve, capacity to serve. And so this is something that, as agencies, from an operational perspective, you're navigating day to day with clients and individuals needing assistance. But from the perspective of a client, it's a very hard system for them to understand where to go for their individual needs, individual rides, different locations that they need to go to. And so how do we create a access point for people to be able to navigate those options based upon those specific needs in a more easier way than calling around to 5 to 10 different agencies to figure out how to make that work. And so the past two plans, and we're not going to go into the past too much, but the past two plans, we've had a centralized either call center or point of contact for individuals to access the transportation options in this area. And the first iteration of this was the One Ride Center with MMT. We all know that, that didn't go over and it didn't work. We're not going to drum up the past. But then the second plan and our most recent plan that's been completed had the centralized call center or booking center work within our human service transportation providers. So housing it within our core human service transportation providers for them to operate. And we know what happened was the pandemic happened, and that was very difficult to navigate. And so in this new plan, looking into how do we make this work for our community, knowing that we've had 2 iterations of this for the past 10 years at this point, 2 iterations of it that hasn't been super successful. We recognize, though, that the times have changed, right? What wasn't successful in the past may be successful now. And so we have to kind of think through, and we'll be leaning on this committee to kind of think through how could this work in our region and what resources do we need to make it work in our region. One of the additional things that we've tasked the consultants with is helping us identify potential funding opportunities for some of these projects that are being suggested. And so that is on their to-do list. Ultimately, it's on us to kind of move forward with those applications and move forward with those opportunities and figuring out whether those are opportunities that PPACG needs to apply for, or are there different opportunities that are should be directed towards transportation providers. And you guys know that I send grants to you guys all the time that I feel is appropriate for your agency and hopefully helpful to your agency. So that is one of the main things that has continued to come out of these planning opportunities. And one of the comments that I want to share, comments that were made pretty reoccurring is, okay, when are we going to see a change, right? When are we going to see a change? We had several folks that have participated in the past 2 planning efforts and also participated in this planning effort through the public engagement piece of it. And, there is this frustration of when we've talked about this several times, when will we see the change? And so I'd like for us to, after the plan is finalized, and there's still opportunity for folks to give public comment. I appreciate the transit providers on this call to give public comment as it's going through committees. I think that's important. But I think we're going to be left with some definite action items for this committee to work on. And I want people to be open to suggestions. Let's work through some of those hard things that hasn't worked in the past. How can we find solutions to those in the future? So that was one of the main highlights that has come out of this plan. Other things that I think are kind of low-hanging fruit that are also things that are already occurring within several of y'all's agencies, and y'all are doing a great job in coordinating this. It's just coordination of training for drivers. I know that there's been a lot of cross-training amongst agencies. If there's a certain agency that provides a training for a specific need or a specific topic, you guys have definitely been sharing those resources with each other, and I really appreciate that and appreciate that coordination. So that was highlighted as also another resource. One of the things that I think kind of has to be unpacked a little bit that is unique is vehicle sharing amongst agencies. This is something that has been kind of a new trend. It actually came out of, or I was introduced to it out of NADTC's grant that we received, and one of the agencies that also received the grant was trying to figure out how to launch something like this. But shared vehicles in terms of being able to help with capacity, and what does that look like? So, each one of you have a workforce, but sometimes you run into issues from a capital perspective that limits your ability to execute, certain things within your certain needs within certain needs that have been identified in your area. And I'll give you a good example. Vehicles break down, right? So being able to have some sort of mechanism to share vehicles in the future. I know some of you guys are already picking up rides for folks. If say for instance, Invita has a vehicle down, I heard that the other day, Teller Senior Coalition stepped up to the plate and took that ride for them. So that's the kind of coordination that we like to see and know that needs to happen in our area. But what does that look like from a vehicle sharing perspective? And that's a new thing for me to kind of wrap my head around. Jacob, am I missing any kind of highlights that have come out of that?
Honestly, I think you did a really good job at kind of giving a good overview. I think you're good. I got nothing to
Okay.
add.
Great, I appreciate it. So any questions on that? And I'll let you know from a timeline perspective. Like I mentioned, the main public engagement side of it has concluded. So now they're taking all of those comments and all of those suggestions and all of the in our open houses, we engage the public in helping us prioritize some of the solutions that have been identified. And so the consultants are taking that information and applying it to, okay, we have this information now. What is this action plan moving forward? What should we focus on? And so the plan will start going through committees. Draft of the plan will start going through committees, I believe in August. Is that right, Jacob?
I'd have to take a look specifically at the calendar. Give me a moment.
I think it's in August. And the specialized transit plan will be presented not just to the MCC, but also to the TAC, our Community Advisory Committee, and also to our Board of Directors. So it'll go through the traditional adoption side of the plan. And once we have the plan in place, I really want to take that plan and start talking about opportunities for putting it into action. And what does that look like? So working on operational plans beyond just the idea perspective. So any questions on that?
So Laura, just, well, this might be multifaceted.
Yeah.
So the plan, we should be presented in August. What's the plan to execution after the plan is released?
So that's really on us. It's really on this team to take into consideration the priorities that the consultants have identified, and then us working on what is operationally feasible, right? Because I think that there's some low-hanging fruit, as I mentioned before, that can be addressed a lot quicker than some of these, much more complicated ideas. And so just like, any other kind of strategic plan, you end up with sort of this roadmap, but you have to put that into what kind of timeline can we work towards this? What are the tools that we need in order to make this happen? funding kind of dictates sometimes when we can pull the trigger on things. And so I think it's important for us to take the plan, us be realistic about what can we do, what can we do within a time frame, right?
That makes complete sense. So I guess we're not operating under a drop dead date of you will implement the plan by X date.
Yeah, it's really, these are long range plans. So we're working on the 2050 plan, right? So, ultimately these plans are updated I think for our area, it has to be updated every 5 years. We typically start that much earlier, just because these plans take about a year to complete. Ours again was compressed this year because of some CDOT issues, but yes, this is a long range plan. So I think it's important. I mean, the funding kind of drives this. You guys drive this. It is, again, a roadmap, a long range roadmap.
Oh, exciting. I think I was the guy that said we create economies of scale through collaboration. So
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, we are on B. I'm not sure, Deanna, if we were able to get anybody from TRE to speak.
I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody, no.
Okay. That's completely fine. I know one of the things that came out of the plan is we weren't able to get TRE at the table, even though we had a lot of invites to TRE and to NEMT at the state level. We also at the spring CASTO conference invited folks from HICPUF to have sort of a open meeting with our specialized transit providers, and they did not want to participate or feel comfortable with participating in the spring. But they do want to participate in the fall conference. So one of the things that I did learn is the person that I can't remember the gentleman who went through the whole rimmer of IntelliRide and switching it back over to how it used to be. The new him is actually a former CDOT employee working within transit, and so that is a little bit encouraging because we have within HIPPUF now a individual who understands transit. So we're going to continue to invite people to the table. If you have contacts within HICPUF that you would like to bring to these conversations, we would love to incorporate them into these conversations moving forward. So we tried our darndest to get folks to the table for the transit conversations because we do know that that program is a critical cog in the wheel of transit around here and being able to provide services. So, all right. C, legislation on transportation and transit. I don't know how much you guys paid attention to this this legislative session, but there was a lot of bills on transportation and transit. There is a lot of highlighted things that were successful, a lot of things that weren't successful in the legislative session. I think one of the wins that for this group that occurred, and I know Mountain Metro and Fountain Municipal Transit are excited about this, is, ultimately we've had zero fare for better air for the past 2 years now, 2 years, I think. And that was one of the things that was actually unfunded this legislative session. And CASTA worked really hard with CDOT to identify a funding source for this year only. So ultimately, what was passed was for surplus MMOF funding that CDOT, that's essentially in the hands of CDOT, will be utilized for this year for Zero Fare for Better Air. And so I know that Mountain Metro and Fountain Municipal Transit are working pretty quickly on being able to access those funds. It was kind of down to the wire of knowing whether this was going to be funded or not. And so now they're in the process of applying for those funds. So hopefully we will have, and I think we will have Zero Fare throughout the summer again. And we'll see how it goes. I think that it has been very successful over the past few years. And I know Jacob has done a great presentation in the past of the impact of that. So that's one of the wins. One of the sort of challenges to transit, I feel like, in this region is there was a bill passed called the Transit Oriented Communities Bill. And you guys may not be aware of this, but ultimately, any, and Jacob can correct me if I'm wrong, any 30-minute headway transit line the municipality must have a transit-oriented community plan for that 30-minute headway transportation line. Is that
I
right,
believe it's
Jacob?
15.
15
or more frequent.
Okay, good. So one of the things that has come out of the traditional transit plan, so the regional transit plan, is increasing or decreasing the headways, right? Being able to provide more frequent service. And this is where we kind of get caught in between our planning, our hopes to increase the frequency of that service, and then also having sort of this extra mandate within the municipalities to go through the process of a transit-oriented communities plan to essentially support that route. Well, one of the things that is a challenge in this area is to, ultimately, whenever another planning mandate is given to the municipalities without any funding behind it, it kind of puts a damper on progress, and it's a tit for tat. Puts a damper on any kind of progress within our transit programs. And so while we want to increase transit frequency, ultimately the municipalities are going to have to go through this planning process that ultimately may impact our ability to increase frequency. Does that make sense to everybody? So I don't know, unintended consequences. We'll see how it works moving forward. Our consultants made a joke that similar legislation has been passed in a couple of other areas across the nation. And as they were going through planning, they essentially did their planning based upon 16-minute headways, the extra 1 minute, so that they didn't fall within this regulation. So I see a hand up. I can't see whose hand is up.
It's mine,
I
Laura.
think it's Melissa.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm wondering if Jacob can comment regarding this. If there are particular places in Colorado Springs where this was being discussed and talked about in terms of increasing the headways, and now the need to have a transit oriented community related to that. can we just talk about that a little bit more? Because I'm just, curious about, if there were particular routes that were being considered, and then knowing this now, what could that transit-oriented community look like on one of those example routes?
So I'll start with the kind of a longer range thought. So we're doing the 2050 plan, right? And part of this, we've identified various corridors for enhanced transit, what we call enhanced transit corridors. And within that, higher frequency is one of those considerations. That's kind of what we're looking at, and we have several throughout the region, and I won't go into detail of what all those look like for the 2050 plan, but in the more short term, one of the things, one of the routes we've kind of been eyeing up is our Route 3 has high ridership. It definitely could benefit from additional frequency, and that one is presently at 30-minute, which the simplest way to look at when you increase frequencies, you basically cut the time in half if you do nothing else with the route. So if you have 60, that'll go to 30, 30 will go to 15, so on and so forth. Presently, we don't have the vehicles to do that Route 3. As y'all may be aware, we've had issues with the vehicle shortage or not a vehicle shortage, but maintenance, issues from maintenance and not having enough vehicles to run service. So we've been using our cutaways, which has kept us pretty well afloat. We do have occasional cutbacks due to vehicle availability, but that has been a very recent, well, not recent, it's been about a year now, let's be honest. It's been about a year we've been dealing with this, and we have additional vehicles coming in the fall, which should help with that. So that's kind of the backside operation. Looking at this particular bill, there are impacts. So we've joked, I know, Laura, you said 16-minute. We've joked here, 20-minute, because that's easier for people to understand versus 16. Not that we want to do that. I think the idea behind it is a good one. Obviously making development more transit friendly, having those abilities for people that are moving into the area to use transit as a truly, possible option. So I think the intent there is good. It's the execution where the challenges come in, and the decisions we make on transit. So kind of in a roundabout way to answer your question, Melissa, the issues that we deal with transit, we now are, having to work with the rest of the city planners to see, okay, what's the impact on you guys? What's the impact on your long-term plans in these areas? So it does add a layer of complexity that really can't comment on whether or not that'll, kill a project, but those things do become a reality, is whether or not it is feasible to conduct, because what we're looking to do with transit now is going to impact other areas that it did not have that kind of an impact before. So there is that to consider. And this, like I said, I think the idea, the intent is good. The execution is where the challenges and the real challenges come out.
And where is Route 3?
Sorry, Route 3 is along Colorado, so right past your offices. So it goes from our downtown terminal along Colorado out to Manitou Springs and then back. That's our Route 3. And
so just, I know I'm getting into the weeds just a little bit here, and just bear with me, and I appreciate it. So Route 3, Colorado Avenue, is a pretty highly developed, residential and business route. So give me an example of what would have to be a transit-oriented community along Route 3 in order to change that up. If you have a thought about that. If you don't, that's fine.
This extends a little bit beyond transit, more into the city planning element in terms of what properties are open, what's looking to be developed, what those plans are for the future. In terms of, that's kind of where that comes from. So from transit perspective, I don't honestly have a real good example what that could look like, short of kind of what you could pull from the bill itself, which is kind of what we're kind of talking in a general sense.
Okay, well, thanks. And I just, my limited, vision of that is, this idea of when the city wants to, move its, transit hub. And then when it does that, can it, develop more, housing and retail when it moves the hub? And so for me to start to think more about the actual routes themselves as they expand, what would it look like to make it a transit-oriented community? I'm just trying to learn more. So thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, and it might help to kind of also comment that our higher frequency corridors, that a lot of those areas will presently and definitely even looking into the more, kind of more close range future, they're in the more developed areas as it is, 15-minute service out into new developments, going out to the peripheral of town isn't on any kind of our minds for this short term, but as we progress and move forward, possibly in the future, but nothing in the short term. It's kind of within our own existing network, which to be honest is for those routes is mostly developed as it is.
Yeah, essentially, Melissa, this would just be an added requirement, kind of like for places that are already kind of established to be kind of a transit oriented community. You would just have to have a plan kind of sort of certifying that it meets those requirements. So more to come on this. There's actually a lot of FTA grants around transit oriented communities. It's just a new thing, a new concept, and I think all the municipalities are going to have to figure out how to navigate. And we don't even have rule making on this yet from a state perspective. So while it passed the rule making period, we may not know exactly what this is supposed to look like until the end of next year. So more on that. So one of the other, if we're good with that one and going over to another one that sort of piggybacks on this is another bill that was passed was the removal of parking requirements. Still having ADA accessibility, those rules have not changed, but ultimately each municipality has adopted parking requirements for excuse me, for development. And so the state passed in this legislation the removal of those parking requirements, essentially to point people more towards transit. So ultimately, right now, different development, say for instance, an apartment complex, they have to have a number of parking spaces available to those that are residing in those residences. The state has basically taken that local control away, and now there's not a real enforcement of parking requirements moving forward. So that is a little bit of a concern from a transit and transportation perspective, because while the idea is to point people to utilizing transit more and more, ultimately the infrastructure is not there. So yeah, a little challenging on some of these things that have come out of this legislation. I think all was made in good faith, but we'll see how they play out. One of the last things that has actually been in this legislative session and the previous legislative session that does affect this group was the statewide transit pass. CASTA did a lot of work on this. Ultimately, I think we're continuing down the path of expanding Connect Colorado instead of necessarily being a statewide transit pass. What's interesting, Connect Colorado was an initiative that was started about 4 years ago with CDOT, and that the plan was to be able to create a centralized platform for people to access specialized transportation and fixed route transportation across the state. That project stalled quite a bit, but was reinvigorated last year when this statewide transit pass idea came up. And so CDOT has contracted out with EcoLane to actually do the project. And I know several of our providers are in process or have switched to EcoLane for their transportation routing. And so we'll be hearing more from the state as those planning efforts and the development of that occurs. But ultimately, I've actually talked to our agency's EcoLane, one of y'all's main folks that y'all been working with on the transition, who's also working on Connect Colorado, and seems like there is quite a bit of movement on that recently. So that's kind of cool, and we're a little bit ahead of the game with some of our providers going on EcoLane's platform. So the thing that I do want to note with that is the intent of this is not to make providers switch to EcoLane as their platform. Ultimately, EcoLane has been tasked with developing a system that would be a centralized platform for all of our transit providers to be able to plug into their individual systems. So we still know that there's agencies that are on programs like TripSpark and Trapeze and things like that, all different companies across the state. And so EcoLane is tasked to figuring out how to connect those through essentially I guess, what do they call that? The connect
Interface.
Yeah, it is kind of a centralized interface for the individual or customer to access. And so we'll see more about that in the future coming out of CDOT. But I highly suggest attending the Transit Monthly meetings that CDOT is putting on, and hopefully they'll have more and more updates about that in the future. So, all right, y'all have heard me talk. Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about, or Deanna, talk a little bit about the social gathering that we were discussing?
Sure. Well, so since the building itself will be unavailable to us, I was thinking that as the summer months come closer, it might be a nice opportunity for us to just kind of gather and get to know each other socially. So we were trying to think about different places and dates and times that might be convenient for folks. So I think what we'll do is probably send out like a doodle poll or something similar to gauge people's interest and availability to just kind of get together, have a drink, grab some appetizers, whatever, and just chat and get to know one another. I think the work that we do is really important. And I'm a big proponent of getting to know one another well so that we can really support each other in the work that we're doing, and just, kind of ride out the storm sometimes when things get a little bit bumpy in the transportation space, and we can just lean on one another and be like, it's okay, we got this. So just to let you all know that kind of more is to come in that space. Melissa, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, then this is my one of my favorite parts of the meeting. Not that I don't love all of it, but information sharing. So we will kind of pass it around the room and see if any folks have any information that they want to share out, any upcoming events, any things to celebrate. And I will start with the folks in the room.
It's Aaron Samura from Silver Key. So I just want to talk about EcoLane since that was the last topic of conversation. I think we as an organization are highly impressed with the efficiency of the program, its ability to route multiple individuals onto the same vehicle and get them all there on time. So moving forward, that is also exciting to see that we may be moving to EcoLane as a communal transportation system. It is really cool the way it works. You could have a driver call off and honestly, you don't miss a beat. You just, all of a sudden, those rides are now on another ride because they were efficient, or another bus because they were efficient.
It's great. Anyone else in the room want to share out anything? Okay. How about in the virtual space? Feel free to take yourself off mute and share as you like.
I'll put this out there. So since I got a brief update there on the specialized transit plan. So the regional transit plan is working through a very, very similar process time-wise. We buddied up on the open houses for both of those, had great showing, I think, or at least a good showing. I think we had 63 overall participants between the 3 different options. So, or maybe it was 56, I think 56. So we had a decent showing for that, got some good feedback, and then kind of more specific to the, and I'll be very, very brief on this, specific to the regional transit plan. A lot of what we were hearing back, we tasked our consultant with really thinking big, right? And so that's kind of what we got. If you look on the map and go on our website, you'll see a lot of big ideas that, man, how do we accomplish that? And so it's right now we're kind of going through that idea of, okay, what is that low hanging fruit that Laura kind of mentioned? And so even now, as I'm kind of working here internally with my group and figuring out what are our service change options for the next year and a half, taking what's in the plan, saying, here's what people are saying, here's what we're seeing, here's what the data shows, and how do we go about making some of those small wins? So still looking into what some of those options look like and seeing what we can do within our current operations with our contractors and drivers and what's feasible also within the budget. So we're working through a lot of that right now, but a couple of the main themes that we kind of saw come out of that was that more frequent service. That was a pretty common theme, the idea of having these enhanced transit corridors with higher frequency of service, maybe some advantages to how the bus gets through, whether it's through queue jumping or other options that kind of make the bus a more efficient means of transportation. But even aside from within our current area, we saw this interest in an expanse to outside areas as well. So one of the things that's in there is this idea for a more on-demand potential type model. So people that have known me know I make this comment all the time: is fixed routes not the answer for everything. We just can't, just a simple bus line everywhere is not going to be the answer. We got to think creatively. We got to look at the local area and say what works here, what's feasible, what could work. And so one of the things that we're looking at is like on-demand zones, and how does this look like as we expand further? But also that has impacts within our own paratransit, within the specialized, and so all these things are interacting. And so part of I think part of the good that's come out of this whole process working with PPACG is kind of how do all these things intertwine? It's not that it wasn't done before, but we're really taking a holistic approach from transit down to para, down to specialized, and what does all this look like from a region? So I think it's been a very good process, a very, very coordinated process between our various groups, and hopefully coming with the best plan. And all joke, little joke, I guess, if we get it wrong, we get to fix it in 5 years. So there's also that to keep in mind. I know there was a question asked earlier about, are we going to do all this? And the answer is, well, yes, maybe not. It's a big undefined right now. And so as we move forward with this, we're going to constantly refine. So we're looking at this now. 5 years from now, we'll be back in the same boat, say, okay, what worked, what didn't, what can be refined, what's changed? 5 years from now, we'll have a different idea of what the future could look like. So how do we pivot to that? So these plans are very much, even though this is a set 2050 plan, a legal document that we had to create for various grant opportunities, but it's also almost a living document in a way that in another 5 years, as long as we stay in the ozone standards, if we fall out of the ozone standard, then it comes down to a 4-year plan. But it's a 5-year plan, basically, that we'll revisit every 5 years and adjust as we need to. So that's my little plug for regional transit plan. On a more, I guess, personal note, I finally have hired my senior transit planner. Anybody that knows, I've been in this position now for almost a year and without a planner. So I am hopefully that person will be starting here next Monday, and I will have another senior transit planner to help me with some of the workload here, because boy, is there a lot to do. So that's my update.
Awesome. And congratulations on the new senior planner. Anyone else want to share out?
So Deanna, I will jump in for a second, since other providers are maybe thinking through what they want to share. I want to bring to everybody's attention that June is celebrates or raises awareness around World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 15th. And one of the ways that MCC folks can keep kind of their eye on this is just a reminder to all the drivers about the opportunities that they have, which I know they have taken advantage of on a regular basis, but just a reminder that if they are seeing something or hearing something, that they could say something. So often, an older adult might get on transit and make a comment about something that sounds a little concerning. And just a reminder that the drivers have the opportunity to report that to Adult Protective Services directly and let them know if they're concerned about something they see or hear. And El Paso County Commissioners are doing a proclamation at their June or one of their meetings, which I don't have that date in front of me. And for Kathy, who's here from Teller County, she can always raise awareness and remind folks up in Teller County about Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and use the whole month as an opportunity to be reminded of how important it is to protect and advocate for our older adults so that they are not victims of abuse or neglect. So just a reminder that that is what June can be all about.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that reminder, and it's so important. Anyone else?
Rosa McCormick with the City of Fountain. June 17th is National Dump the Pump Day, and we're advertising free rides for Fountain Municipal Transit riders for that day, just to ride the bus instead of drive. We are also offering free youth bus passes for the month of June, because we hope to participate in the Zero Fare for July and August. So June, we'll be offering student ride bus passes for free. And that's what's going on here in Fountain.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone else?
Hey, Rosa, what was that date again that you're doing that?
June 17th.
Thank you.
We also have on June 26th Bike to Work Day. So I plan on biking to work, but that's a normal thing for me. But if y'all want to participate, you can actually go on just Google Bike to Work Day, Colorado Springs, and there's, I think, 40 different sites of different places that are setting up, coffee stands, or we're actually partnering up with Cerberus here and Frankly Coffee, and going to be offering burritos and coffee for folks to come through. So I forgot to mention that.
Super fun. Anyone else? Okay. Well, seeing nor hearing anything else, any items for the next meeting? Anything that we want to put on the next docket for June?
Be thinking of that, guys, and feel free to send any ideas out to me and Melissa, and we'll talk those through with Aaron and Deanna.
Absolutely.
Also, we will be fully virtual the next meeting, so just a reminder there. And if you show up to the building, nobody will be here. So
You'll have to turn around and go home.
Hey, Laura, do you have a general deadline you need additional topics by? That'd be helpful for us to know.
yeah, so we actually meet, the executive committee meets the second, I believe it's the second Thursday. Yeah, second Thursday of the month. So if we could have that in before then that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So if you have any items, feel free to send them our way. Be on the lookout for that doodle poll to solidify some general times and dates for a social gathering. And I think that's about it then. We are adjourned for the day. It is 10:30, unless there's anything else. Anybody have anything else that they want to insert? Okay. All right. All right, then meeting adjourned. It is 10:30 a.m. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the sunshine. And we will see you next month. Thanks. Bye-bye.